Hey, we're back. And guess what? We got another story for you. If you didn't see last week's, you should check it out. It was the Easter story of Jesus' resurrection. And this is happening right after the version where Mary was crying outside the tomb, right? And then who shows up? Jesus. But who did she think he was?
A gardener.
A gardener, that's right. So in this version, the disciples are still all hiding, and Mary knows. Still hiding. That's right. Yeah. So we're going to find them in their little hold-up little house. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Let's do this. Go team.
Go team.
Our story begins in the little house where the disciples were hiding, for they were afraid of suffering the same fate as their teacher, a grisly execution that had happened days before. Huddled in fear in the house, the disciples were terrified.
They're coming for us, you know. I know they're coming for us. Did you lock the door? Of course I did. I just hope they don't hear us in here.
When all of a sudden, in the room, while the door was locked, there shone a great light. And who was it? It was Jesus. He had appeared amongst them.
What in the world? Oh my goodness.
The disciples were all shocked and surprised, and Jesus spoke to them in their fear. "Peace be with you," he said. "Peace be with you. I have been sent from God, and now I am sending you. Receive the Holy Spirit." And he breathed the Spirit upon them. "Go, forgive sins. If you forgive sins, they're forgiven. Go, get back to it, gang. The mission is still at hand. Go with my peace. Go with the Spirit." The disciples were standing in amazement.
He seems really bright. Can you see? Is that him?
The disciples were in almost utter disbelief, but that's when they saw his hands. His hands still had the holes in them from his execution. And after breathing the Spirit upon them, he departed.
Can you believe that? I wouldn't have believed it if I hadn't seen it myself.
Now Thomas, who you'll remember was the disciple who was brave and said he wanted to follow Jesus to Jerusalem, even if it meant their own death, was not in the locked room.
What?
What?
Where was he?
What? Where was Thomas?
Yeah.
Your guess is as good as mine. For all we know, he could have been getting food or supplies. "Hey, how many pizzas do you think I'll need for 12 people hiding in a house?"
I don't know, maybe 6.
"Yeah, let's do that." Or he could have been out still doing what he always does, telling the story of Jesus. "Yeah, the way I see it is he may be dead, but I'm not. And I still think there was a lot of good things he had to say. So if they want me to stop, they're going to have to arrest me." For all we know, he could have just been distraught and not know where to go in the midst of all this.
Sir, you finished your pizza like an hour ago.
I don't know. I feel so lost.
What brings you to Jerusalem?
I don't even know anymore. To his credit, Thomas wasn't hiding in a locked room.
Hey, it's scary out there, you know.
True. When Thomas arrived to see the disciples later on, "Pizza's here." When he arrived, the house was abuzz.
You'll never believe it, you'll never believe it, you'll never believe it.
"What are you talking about?"
He was here, Jesus, and he was back and had holes in his hands.
Holes in his hands?
I saw the whole thing. Lights, smoke, holes in his hands, it was real.
What do you mean?
It was great and also kind of scary.
Of course it was kind of scary. He's dead.
Why is this such a surprise to all of you? I already told you I saw him.
But now I've seen him, which is totally different. Look, guys, I think you've been cooped up in here way, way, way too long. No way. No offense, but I think it's because you've been inside. You need to get out. Only way I'm going to believe this is if I see it myself, if I can see the holes in his hands. You guys, this is kind of cruel what you're doing here. A week later, when the disciples were all huddled in the house, Thomas included, it happened again. Thomas could not believe his own eyes. Peace be with you. Thomas, it's good to see you. My Lord, my God. Here, you wanted proof? Here, look at my hands. Oh my goodness. I can't believe what I'm seeing. You believe because you've seen. Blessed are those who believe who haven't seen. It's true. Now, Jesus did many more miracles in their sight that aren't written here.
What?
What?
What else did he do?
What else did he do?
Yeah.
Your guess is as good as mine. It is finished.
Whoa, I've never seen anyone eat 6 pizzas before. Whoa.
Get a load of this, my disciples.
Who made you show them this? Pretty cool, right?
Regardless of what other miracles happened or what other signs he did, one thing was clear. Jesus was back. And this was written so that you would believe that Jesus is the Messiah. Hey, that's what happened. Basically, with a few ideas we might have had in the middle of it. But yeah, I have to say, I am missing getting to gathering with folks. And I felt like I was connecting in a pretty big way with the characters in the story this week, especially the disciples who are holed up in that little house. I don't think I'm as afraid as they were. Thankfully, we don't have potential people that would want to arrest us for being disciples of Jesus. But I am finding some sort of connection there. Without getting to see everybody, I'm getting pretty bummed. I mean, it's great. We get to be in our homes with our families and we get to play outside, go on walks, but I do miss seeing everybody. The disciples were in the midst of fear, holed up in their houses for different reasons, but they were afraid. So with that fear, that all of a sudden we get this great story where Jesus shows up. Jesus had already appeared to Mary and he appears to the disciples. In the midst of their fear and anxiety, he shows up and says, peace. Peace be with you. Peace be with you. Wow. And he breathes his spirit upon them, tells them, go, forgive sins, set the captive free. You know, this powerful thing that we're called to do, that the mission is still alive and well. What great news to receive in the midst of such uncertainty and fear. When Thomas is told about it, though, he has a hard time coming to grips with it. He's not sure. It's hard to believe something like that could happen. Sometimes we call Thomas a doubter, but I don't know how fair that is. All he's asking for is for the same experience that they had. He's not doubting so much as he's faithfully saying, guys, I need to see this too. I want Jesus to show up to me. I want Jesus to tell the story to me. I want to hear those words because like them, he had walked with him, seen all of his teachings. He says, I want this. And I will have the hardest time coming to terms with this. If I can't see it for myself, I can't believe like you do. I want that sometimes. In the midst of times that feel uncertain, I doubt and I say, God, help. I don't think that's doubting so much as I think it is a declaration of faith. God, show up. Show up in the midst of this. I hope when you guys are doing the good and faithful work at home of practicing physical distancing, I hope that you're encouraged by this story today of Jesus coming in the midst of that discouragement and saying, hey, I'm with you still, and we're going to do this thing together. More than that, let me give you something, my spirit, a spirit of peace and joy, a spirit of self-control and love for our neighbors, a spirit that I'm going to give you to do the things we need to do. If you're waiting again, like I am, for that bright day where all of us will get to gather together again with our friends in the world free of fear, well, feel free to take a page from Thomas in our story today, who says, God, show me, help me. I want you to change this. Lift it in prayer. Lift your hopes in prayer. It's a faithful thing to do. That's a challenge this week. Think about all the things in the world, all the places in the world where you wish God would show up, where Jesus would intervene with all his lights and love and joy and say peace. And then ask yourself, how can you be a part of making that peace? So if one of your prayers is, Jesus, I hope you'll show up and reveal yourself to those who are lonely and alone, you can help. You can help with that mission. You can think of a neighbor in your community that might be feeling extra isolated and maybe send them a message. Maybe send them some mail. Maybe draw in chalk on their sidewalk and remind them you love them and that we're all in this thing together. In fact, on that note, be on the lookout in your emails, as Good Shepherd's going to be sending something out, especially to you folks, families who are wondering, how can we be a part of this good news in the world while people are hiding in their homes? We got some resources for you. So be on the lookout, because I hope you will be motivated by today's story of wanting God to show up in the midst of this, wanting God to reveal God's self. Well, let's get to doing that ourselves, because God's doing it. God is. This about wraps it up. But think about, too, who in the story did you relate with? Think about in the story, what was a question you had or a frustration you had? Like, I always wonder, I'm like, why didn't Jesus just show up to Thomas or wait till Thomas got back? But who knows? Ask those questions. Talk about them in your family. And if you're longing to see good news in the midst of challenging times like Thomas, know this. So am I. And prayers about that are not doubting. They're faithful. So have a good week. Bye.